Hello everyone, Gen X Man, back with another Super Saturday. Here today to cover another gem from my childhood that actually falls in the same sphere, I guess you would say, as one of my previous ones with the Herculoids. And we have Thundarr the Barbarian, Lords of Light, and his fantastic sun sword, accompanied by his friends Ukla the Mock and Princess Ariel, otherwise known as the Sorceress. And the sun sword is not a lightsaber. They're definitely absolutely different. They're not the same thing. But I will say the sun sword sound effects, it's pretty sweet. That was actually initially what kind of got me into it was I started watching about 5 minutes of it and I heard that and I was just like, what is that? That's cool. But anyway, this is another of the Hanna-Barbera Classics collection, just like the one I had, the Herculoids. The difference being the one with the Herculoids, there was apparently another collection that actually had, I think it was 8 additional episodes that premiered in the 80s. Whereas, the Herculoids was from the late 60s. This, however, this is it. Is it to my knowledge, the time of this recording, as they say, this is what you get, and it was not expensive. So if you want to pick up a copy, highly recommend it. Very entertaining. The only far-reaching criticism I would level against it is that it falls under the same oppression, and yeah, I'm going to use that word, as many of the shows in the 80s. Was that you can fire 5 million rounds as long as nobody gets shot. You can have a sword as long as nothing but, upholstery and furniture gets cut, and so on and so forth. So again, you're going to have that where, you're going to have pitched battles between two forces and people are just tripping and getting tied up and other non-violent ways of subduing them because yeah, they were really worried about that when I was growing up in the 80s. I have no idea why. But this is a post-apocalyptic sci-fi action adventure. Interesting thing is that it was actually created by what was his name? Steve Gerber. That's the same guy. That's the comic book writer, the same guy that came up with Howard the Duck. If you if you know Howard the Duck, I found that actually very surprising and interesting. I was like, wow, you went, yeah, that and Howard the Duck. That's pretty far from each other on the wheel. So the but the show Thundarr the Barbarian ran from October 1980 to October 1981 and was back in 83 for reruns. I don't know for absolutely certain when I first got exposed to it, but I'm willing to bet it was through the satellite dish that I mentioned in a previous video. Running up the hill in the middle of the night, cranking it until it stopped. Stared out in the terrifying woods, wondering, oh God, what's out there? It was just deer. It's fine. But Thundarr was set in as it says, post-apocalyptic. There was a disaster where a rogue planetoid allegedly passed between the Earth and the Moon, stripped away the Earth's atmosphere, and cracked the Moon in two. Now, obviously, our understanding of science today is not what it was in 1980. So, that part does not stand up to the test of time. That being said, it's still every bit as fun to just turn your brain off and enjoy. So don't dwell on that too much. I found the setting was the post-apocalyptic setting was fascinating and different from a lot of the others because it was set in a cluttered wasteland of very familiar images and monuments and landscapes. I mean, you were in New York City, you were in LA, you were in Vegas, etc., etc., and they would always include things to tip that off and to show you where you were so that the audience could be like, oh hey. And I think they may have gotten a touch of that from if y'all seen the Charlton Heston movie from back in the 70s, I believe it was Planet of the Apes. One of the best twist endings you have ever seen in your life. Spoiler alert. But when he comes upon the Statue of Liberty and he realizes he's not on some planet. He's on Earth in the future and everything's blown up by nukes. And you're just kind of like, that I think influenced Gerber's creation of this landscape in that it is post-apocalyptic, but we're driving home images of the familiar, so the audience is like, "Oh yeah, okay, I know where I am." And I feel like that helps. Like you're not completely dropped into some alien landscape. It's familiar. But the principal antagonists, well, the protagonists of this were obviously Thundarr and his friend Ukla, which is a mock, which is totally not a Wookiee. It's two completely different things. And Princess Ariel, who was, in many respects, she was a very generic sorceress type figure. I don't remember any episodes really delving into. Actually, I don't remember any episodes delving much into anybody's past. They mainly was in the here and now, and it was kind of nice. Um, but Princess Ariel suffered from a debilitating sorceress disease where she couldn't cast the same spell twice. She'd make a bridge and then they'd go 20 feet and they'd hit another chasm and they'd be like, oh no, there's nothing we can do. I guess we gotta stand and fight. And you're like, she just cast a bridge. She just made a bridge like 2 minutes ago, whatever. So that was, again, it's a turn your brain off and enjoy kind of series. The principal antagonists were wizards and werewolves and anthropomorphic races like crocodile men and rat men and all that kind of stuff, and true monsters like giant stomping, crushing, raw things. It was populated in a world of savagery and super science and sorcery. So it was a nice blending of elements that you don't get a lot of in the same media, and it all seemed to blend very well. That was one of the things it did very well, was that it melded those three things very efficiently. It didn't waste narrative time trying to explain this, that, and the other thing. It just said, no, no, here's this magic sword, and here's this sorcery, and here's this scientific gadget, and you're just like, okay, that's fine. And I think that was probably helped along by the 2D animation. You can do a ton of 2D animation and it can translate very well and it can be very familiar and very comforting. Or at least I find it comforting watching these shows. Let's see what else we got. The season one had 13 issues or 13 episodes. See, I'm talking about comic books. You got me thinking about Steve Gerber and comic books. But season two had 8 episodes. So you had 21 episodes. Public education, here you go. Yeah, 21 episodes total. And then it was canceled. I believe low ratings. There was no interest in keeping it going, which is a shame because there was at least one kid out there that was just loving it and wanted to see more. But alas, that didn't happen. And also, a bit of lore as I was researching this was that this was supposed to have its own Sunday strip in the Sunday papers. Any of you old enough will recognize that. Uh, in the Sunday newspaper, which I used to deliver as a kid, and they were this freaking thick, even for Elizabeth, West Virginia. There was pages of cartoon comic strips, usually 4 panels, and just in a block, and you'd read them like that, but they were always very entertaining and they absolutely had the cliffhanger mastered to make you want to see what happens next week, the adventure ones. Most of them were comedy and they were just one shot done and done, but you would also get the adventure strips like Prince Valiant and so on and so forth. And it apparently this was what was planned for Thundarr. He was going to expand out into the newspapers, and I was like, oh man, I would love to have had that. But and the really cool thing was that Jack the Legend Kirby was going to be doing it. I'm like, oh man, can you imagine a Sunday strip of Thundarr drawn and probably written by Jack Kirby? Oh yes, sign me up, absolutely. But that did not happen, sadly. In a bit of current lore, apparently Dynamite has picked up the license or whatever it is, the permission to make comic books out of this, just like they've done with Space Ghost and Herculoids and so on and so forth. So I have not seen that or heard of it coming out yet. If y'all have heard something different, make sure to drop a comment below and let us all know, because I think I speak for many of us when I say that I'm interested. Because I have, and I'll review this at some point. I have their Space Ghost, the first volume. Oh, It's good. It's really good, especially somebody who comes from these, these classic Hanna-Barbera cartoons, and now I'm grown up and old. How is that going to translate? Is that what I'm still looking for? Is this pure nostalgia? But it turns out no. The Space Ghost one is updated. I wouldn't say for modern audiences, to use air quotes again. I know we hate those, but it is modernized to some degree and updated to some degree, just enough to where it can tell the story that it needs to tell, and it's a story that I find fascinating, and I can't wait to see more. I'm curious, are they going to do a Birdman? Are they going to do a C Lab 2020, et cetera, et cetera? I would also accept a C Lab 2021 for those of you who know about that one. But that is Thundarr the Barbarian, and I would definitely recommend anybody out there curious about it to pick it up. Now, comparing it to my previous entry, the Herculoids had more freedom to explore the violence and adventure and so on and so forth because it was late 60s and the ban hadn't come down on anything violent. So you'll find this series has a lot more, like I said, tripping and falling and getting tied up kind of stuff as opposed to getting the beat down. So that's a shame. I would have loved to have seen a Thundarr where they take the kid gloves off. That would have been sweet, but that's not the case here. That being said, it is still deeply entertaining. The setting is rich and vibrant and fantastic. Animation is right up there, top notch, and the characters are interesting. You know, everybody was firing on all cylinders. I enjoyed it. Obviously, I enjoyed Hercules more, but I enjoyed this just as much. So, recommend anybody curious, go out there, check it out. Have yourselves a nice little Saturday morning romp, which is what I do. That's my little tradition here in the house. If you guys are looking for traditions, is Saturday morning cartoons. I'll dig something out, something animated, and watch it every Saturday because that's just I don't know, keeps the kid in me alive. And as the years go by, I need all the help keeping that kid alive I can get. But that's all I got for you today, guys. Thank you all who stopped by. There's tons of people stopping by checking my videos. Thank every one of you. Just it's so heartening to see so many people having any interest at all in my old ramblings. And I hope I entertained you. That's my only goal here. And I will see you probably on Tabletop Tuesday. I think we're going to delve into the Marvel superheroes character I rolled up last week, and we're going to find out what happens with him. So stay tuned for that, and stay tuned for next week's Super Saturday. Not going to spoil what it is, but I already got two or three possibilities, so we'll see who wins out. All right, rambled on long enough. Thank y'all again. Take care.